So what's up? Today's video is a book review video. Now that it's been holidays, I have actually been reading less than usual, but because the semester just finished and that, I was listening to a lot of audiobooks and that and really enjoying them. Today I want to go through 3 of the books that I've read recently and that have really made an impact on me and that I've thought a lot about recently. And they are Homo, The Power of Habit, and The Reality Dysfunction. Starting off with The Reality Dysfunction, since it's the only book that I have a physical copy of. So this 1,211 page sci-fi novel is a real monster. It's just really small font. It's a monstrous book. I think it might have been the longest fiction book I've ever actually read, but I really enjoyed it. Set on in a futuristic galaxy in that where they've got space travel and humanity is kind of split into 2 castes, the Edenists and the Atomists. One uses biological tech to basically extend their lifespan indefinitely, and they interface with these sentient starships and sentient space habitats to basically live on forever when they die. They can just put their memories into those habitats and that. And then the Atomists, which is another sector of humans which use technology and that to augment their bodies and that with prosthetic limbs and additional, they call them mental mnemonics, so they could talk to each other and that using telepathy and that with technology. Really cool book. And then there's a big story in that on this colony planet and that where an evil force starts developing and that and spreading, sequestering people throughout the galaxy and that. Really good though, I really enjoyed it. Really ignited some of the positivity and optimism and excitement I have for technology and for space travel in particular. Really exciting. Really long book, but I'd recommend listening to it if you in any way enjoy science fiction. Like if you enjoyed The Martian, you'll probably like this. It's quite a bit rougher and a lot more sex and violence and that in it, a lot more gratuitous stuff. But it's a far more adult novel and that, and I really enjoyed it and I really appreciated the parts of it that got developed and fleshed out. Okay, I'll admit, BDF Hamilton can ramble on a bit. It was like page 400 out of 1,000 and the evil force hadn't yet even been introduced, so he does take his time getting to the point, but I really enjoyed it, and nice for a change to be a part of and to lose yourself, I guess, in a novel that's so detailed and so hell-bent on building up a world and that you can really lose yourself into, which at the time of coronavirus I guess is really nice. And I'd love to be an Edenist one day and transfer my memories to a space habitat and that. And even on my Instagram bio, I actually have that. The only thing I really want is a Neil cylinder. And they've got some of those in this book and that. And so really cool stuff, really nice. I really enjoyed it. One of the best fiction books I've actually read in a long time, if not ever. Would definitely recommend. The next book that I read recently that made an impact on me was Homo by Yuval Noah Harari. Really good book, really long actually, a bit too long, he rambled a bit, but basically the main premise of the book was talking about the history and that of humanity and humanity's scientific and agricultural progress through the ages and how that is being replaced nowadays and in the future with the quest for youth and knowledge and basically immortality. He went on explicitly to say how in the past humanity has been mainly focused on agriculture, and so a large part of the beginning of the book talks about religion's influence on agrarian society and that, and how so much of the world that we know today came and developed as a result of the move from hunter-gathering to agricultural society. And some really interesting points he made about religion and about the way the social systems that we still use today were once implemented, and then going on further in the book to talk about how humans will use our science and technology in future to focus less and less on war, famine, plague, conquering territory, and more on gathering knowledge, extending lifespans, and pursuing knowledge and star travel, basically. So I felt he could have had a bit more focus on the futuristic parts of the book, futuristic parts of humanity and that, his arguments about that, because he delved quite a lot back into the past and history and that, and which I thought he did a much better job of in Sapiens. Excellent book, it's one of his as well, I much preferred it to this one actually in fact. But that did a much better job of giving a summary of humanity right all the way down from single-celled organisms right up to agrarian society and modern day technology and that. So I thought he did a better summary of that, and he talked a lot about dataism at the end of the book. The entire second half of the book actually was kind of focused on philosophy and humanity moving towards dataism and really focusing on gathering information and points of information on the world around us and that to use in technology and to use that data basically to move humanity forward. He got a bit sidetracked in that. I didn't so much enjoy it, but just looking through my notes here and that he seemed to jump around quite a lot, talking about famine, epidemics and that in the past. Quite topical actually, talking about how famines and that have been reduced a lot and that in modern day society and that even taking COVID and that into account, humanity is facing far less plagues and disease deaths today than it was 200 years ago. So interesting and topical, and for that reason talking about the decline of war, how modern countries are more knowledge based than territorial resource based, how humans asking what humans will replace war, famine and plague with: immortality and a quest for happiness. He's a philosopher, so he delves quite a lot, a philosopher and historian, so he delves quite a lot into philosophy and that, which I'm a big fan of, but he kind of went full hog on that in this book. Basically how the economy in the world needs endless growth, so we need to get into space and that for humanity to carry on improving and that. Lots of small little information, like little bits of information and philosophy, like about how factory farming is so unethical and that, and then talking about like the nature of consciousness and that, how the Bible is a byproduct of the agricultural revolution. Very interesting stuff in that. He's a very well learned guy and that. It just felt like his focus in the book could have been a bit more succinct. And then let me scrolling to the end of the book and that, talking about how humans' value lies in sharing thoughts and feelings, how it's part of the great data flow, talking again about dataism, how AI and that might one day take over us because human beings might not be the ultimate form of intelligence like we currently think it is. We currently think we're at the pinnacle of human intelligence and human progress and knowledge, even though we are very unlikely to be so. And then, I was talking about data, algorithms, democracy. Good book. Could have used a bit more focus in that, and I much preferred Sapiens, but with... we actually also have a physical copy of it. Damn, I wish I'd used that at the beginning of this monologue, just for a visual aid. But pretty good book. I quite enjoyed it. Could have been a bit shorter and that, could have used some more focus in that. But good historical context. Really good if you want to learn some things about the world and about how the social system works in the modern day era and how it came about. Not as good as Sapiens, but still worth a read. And then the last book on my list that I want to talk about today is The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. So this is the only one actually I only have an audiobook copy of. But basically very interesting, talking about the structure of habits and the way that human beings perform tasks and perform daily actions and that repetitively so that they eventually become automatic and that in our brains and become a habit, and just the science of habits and habit formation and that, and how you can use it to your advantage to either get rid of old habits that you don't want to carry on pursuing, like smoking or gambling, and how to create new better habits like exercising and studying and working and that kind of stuff. And just like the talk about a keystone habit that leads to all other habits and good behaviors forming, so like exercise as a keystone habit around which you base all your other good and new habits. Talking about the structure of the habits as made up of a cue, a routine, and a reward. So a cue, something that tricks your brain into suddenly slipping into the process of doing a habit. So you see chocolate bar, oof, you start eating, or you see your running shoes out next to your bed, so you put them on when you wake up and you go for a walk. That's your cue. Your routine is the actual steps in performing the habit itself, like where you run, how you eat your healthy diet, or where you get your cigarettes from, that kind of habits, that kind of routine. And then the reward afterwards, what you get from doing the habit. Endorphins when you're running, endorphins when you eat a bar of chocolate, the high you get after smoking a cigarette, or like the great marks and that, and academic rewards you get from studying hard. And so interesting in that to actually think about your habits and your life in the context of that framework and that. There's another habit book that I see a lot of YouTubers have been talking about. I think it's called Atomic Habits, which is more based around how to actually perform and how to create new habits. And that this book was more of a scientific approach and analysis of the formation of habits and that, and the history and science behind it. He talked a lot about the basal ganglia and that in the brain, I don't know if I pronounced that, and how the brain tissue close to the stem gathers habits and chunks them together, and that's where your deep-seated like routine behaviors are stored in your brain. So that was kind of interesting. We talked a lot about advertising and businesses and how they use habits and habit formation and that to sell products and also to analyze their own internal behaviors. And then also just obviously talking about how finding the root cause or first principles of a habit or a problem allow you to create a better solution, or finding out why you're smoking, and that is the first step to stopping smoking, because something is causing you to smoke. You're not just doing it because it's fun, you're doing it because of a past reason, and using the same logic to create new habits like exercising or studying, and that what drives that desire to study. And so interesting to think about your habits and your daily actions actually in the framework that I was talking about. Yeah, and I've actually thought about it a lot recently, and how like the things I do every day, waking up, studying in the morning, studying at just after 6 a.m. when I wake up, and that's a really good habit. And the cue is just waking up at 6 a.m. and having my books and that all set out, having my computer there ready, having my phone switched off so I can't get distracted, and then the reward afterwards of going for breakfast outside maybe, or downstairs, and taking a break from work, switching on my phone and checking my messages and that for the first time in the day. That's the reward. And so practical stuff as well. And then just some small examples on that of how habits and that have had control over big situations in humanity's history, like oil spills and company meltdowns and successful companies and that. And yeah, interesting book. I enjoyed it a lot. But overall, if I had to pick a favorite from these three books, it was The Reality Dysfunction. Granted, it's the only fiction book amongst these other two non-fiction books, but I just really enjoyed it. And yeah, it was good to keep my brain busy recently with all the crazy stuff that's going on in the world. Thank you for making it all the way through this video. If you have, I will see you soon, and cheers. Oh, that was a lot of talking, damn. Some verbal diarrhea these days. Damn! Just filmed this in my mom and dad's room, just for a change of scenery. Yes. Anyway, see you soon.